Purpose is to prevent the interference with the use of streets with the siting of these facilities in public rights of way. That's primarily the purpose. It also involves local input into the aesthetics of what these small wireless facilities will look like. So kind of just a brief overview, we have 4.19020, which is the definition section. And then we're moving to 4.19030, which makes co-location of a small wireless facilities on a city structure or third-party owned pole a permitted use. It sets forth the application process and requirements and an exception for routine maintenance and replacement. And that it states that the application fees are going to be set by resolution. A little bit more on that later. So 4.19040 outlines when the city can deny an application and how long they have to deny an application. And so it also adds a shot clock for the placement, for the resolution of an application at 60 days on pre-existing structures and 90 days for new builds. 4.19050 states how small wireless facilities may be placed in the right-of-way and structures, decorative poles in historic districts. It allows the replacement of city structures or other decorative poles under very limited circumstances and subject to the requirements of the municipal code. In historic districts, they have to conform to an aesthetic where it kind of matches what that historic district looks like. Of other poles within 350 feet of that installation. And that's going to be a determination that's made by community development in Article 13. 4.19060 talks about construction and work permits, how it doesn't create a property right or interest. So just because they put up a small wireless facility on one of our poles doesn't mean that they have a property interest in our pole. And the permits to build out these facilities will last for 180 days unless extended by the city for good cause. And that they are subject to the relocation provisions of GPMC 4.18. So the fees are supposed to be set by resolution with our fee schedule. And now the FCC's report listed fees amounts that it considers to be reasonable. And we're taking into account that this is in 2018 dollars, this is 2022. So it's $500 for an application that covers up to 5 small wireless facilities, $100 for each additional attachment, and $1,000 for a new pole containing these small wireless facilities with a $270 fee, recurring fee to cover costs and maintenance. Now, the FCC report doesn't use this as a cap, doesn't use these figures as a cap. So if we want to charge higher prices by resolution, we have to show that the higher fees that we're charging are a reasonable approximation of actual cost, and that the costs are reasonable and that the costs are non-discriminatory. So that any cell company that wants to put up small wireless facilities is going to be subject to the same rules. So the call to action is tonight, July 20th, 2022, and the call to action is to adopt the Small Wireless Facilities Ordinance, to adopt it with modifications, or to delay adoption of the Small Wireless Ordinance. And so, in addition, you should have in front of you documentation from US Cellular talking about the health and safety of these small wireless facilities, explaining kind of what the FCC looks at in terms of health and safety when it comes to siting these facilities. With that, I turn it over to Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions? Vanessa?
Forgive me if I missed it. Is there a definition for small wireless facility?
Yes, there is. It's a small wireless facility means a facility that meets each of the following conditions. So this is going to be under, 4.19020Q. It's on page 19 of the packet.
Thank you. I do have an additional question. 4.19.070, it says small wireless facilities are subject to the relocation provisions of 4.18. And then under 4.18H, it says this chapter shall not apply to small wireless facility. Are those two in contradiction of each other?
I don't think so. So this is, I think if we're looking at 4.18, this is talking about like ongoing costs for regulation. It isn't talking about relocation. These are for different costs.
Thank you.
Other questions? No? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this issue? Please step forward and state your name for the record.
Rika Brown, Grants Pass. And I'm now curious to hear the exact definition of a small wireless facility.
All right, council, looks like we have no further public comment. I'll turn it over to you for discussion. Joel?
Well, I just ask that Augustus answers the public question.
So a small wireless facility means a facility that meets each of the following conditions pursuant to Section 47 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 1.6002, subsection I, as may be amended or superseded. 1, the facilities are mounted on structures 50 feet or less in height, including the antennas, or 2, are mounted on structures no more than 10% taller than other adjacent structures, or 3, do not extend existing structures on which they are located to a height of more than 50 feet or by more than 10%, whichever is greater. And number 2, each antenna associated with the development, excluding associated antenna equipment, is no more than 3 cubic feet in volume. And number 3, all other wireless equipment associated with the structure, including wireless equipment associated with the antenna and any pre-existing associated equipment on the structure, is no more than 28 cubic feet in volume. And number 4, the facilities do not result in human exposure to radio frequency in excess of the applicable safety standards specified in Section 47 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 1.1307, subsection B.
Joel?
Well, I don't want to cut discussion short, but I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt the ordinance amending the Grants Pass Municipal Code, Chapter 4.18.010, purpose and intent, exclusions, and adding Chapter 4.19, small wireless facilities, to be read by title only, first reading.
Thank you. Second from Kurt. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Not seeing any discussion. Nope. Joel, you made the motion to approve. How do you vote?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
No.
Valerie?
Yes.
Vanessa?
No.
DJ?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Brian?
No.
Motion passes 6-3. Actually, 5-3. There's only 8 of you. All right. So because it was not unanimous, we can't make that second reading tonight. It will come up again at a future meeting.
But I do need to make the first reading.
First reading, thank you.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass, amending Grants Pass Municipal Code Chapter 4.18.010, purpose and intent, exclusions, and adding Chapter 4.19, small wireless facilities.
All right, thank you, Karen. Next up on the agenda. We can't do the second reading tonight. It wasn't unanimous. All right. So we're going to consider a resolution consenting to Josephine County's application of ordinance number 2022-02. And Augustus is presenting again.
All right, so this is Measure 109, which is the psilocybin production and psilocybin treatment center ballot measure that came up in 2020. Okay, that's... So this was advanced from a July 11th workshop for a more comprehensive discussion by council, and there's a lot of options before council tonight. The presentation that I'm about to give is more centralized around the consent to the county's ordinances because that was what was requested of us by the county. So I'm going to give you that option, and then I'm going to give you the other options available to council. So starting with Ordinance 2022-002, the county is seeking to prohibit the manufacture of psilocybin products within the unincorporated areas of Josephine County and within the city of Grants Pass and the city of Cave Junction, pursuant to the city's consent under ORS 203-040. So the prohibition section explicitly states that the establishment of psilocybin product manufacturers is prohibited in Josephine County, and that OHA shall not issue licenses to applicants for psilocybin product manufacturing in the county. And the penalties are that they are going to be considered public and private nuisances and a Class A violation. So before I go on, I kind of want to do a recap as to why this is coming before you and why council is going to have to make this decision. It's because pursuant to Measure 109, the voters of Oregon wanted OHA to kind of pursue this program when it comes to both production of psilocybin and establishing psilocybin treatment centers. And so the way that the ballot measure was made and the way that the statute reads is that all of the municipalities in Oregon are opted into this program automatically unless they choose to opt out by putting the question before the electors of their respective jurisdictions for the next election. So as of right now, if the city didn't do anything, the city would be opted into this program, and then all that would be left for staff to do is to come up with reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on both the manufacture of psilocybin products and the siting of these psilocybin treatment centers. So Ordinance 2022-002 deals with the manufacture of psilocybin products. So that's the physical plant itself, any sort of derivatives, any sort of any other things that you can use to give out psilocybin. So Ordinance 2022-003 prohibits, oh my goodness. It's meant to prohibit the establishment of psilocybin service centers within the unincorporated areas of Josephine County and within the city of Grants Pass and the city of Cave Junction pursuant to our consent. And so this ordinance says expressly that the establishment of psilocybin centers would be prohibited in Josephine County, and the OHA would not issue licenses to applicants for the operation of psilocybin service centers. Again, the penalty would make the establishment a public and private nuisance subject to a Class A violation. So the county has asked the cities of Cave Junction and Grants Pass to consent. That's going to be accomplished by resolution pursuant to ORS 203-040. And the reason that we're hearing this today is because the county is doing their first reading of the ordinances next week for both 2022-002 and 2022-003 in order to get to have it adopted and then get the measure on the ballot for the general election by August 19th. So here are your alternatives. So council can consent to the county's ordinances. That's one option. Second is that council could choose to draft its own ordinances prohibiting or allowing the production of psilocybin products and/or psilocybin treatment centers. So what this would require is we'd have to do a ballot title and explanatory statement, get the resolutions out, and we'd have to get all of that wrapped up by August 3rd. So it's approved and ready to go for filing by August 19th. So there would essentially be 2 items on the November ballot, one for the county and one for the city. That's one option. Council can choose to consent to one measure, one of the county's measures, and not the other. So if the city so chose, council could go the direction where we allow psilocybin manufacturing, but not the treatment centers, or vice versa. And this would require a change to the draft resolution, and then we would have to start the process of drafting time, place, and manner regulations, which is going to be subject to final rulemaking by the health authority. Third is that council could temporarily prohibit treatment centers and production to allow for the OHA rulemaking to conclude and to provide adequate time to consider reasonable time, place, and manner regulations. So this would still require referral to the voters, so we'd still have to do the explanatory statement, and we'd just make it clear that the city is temporarily opting out of the psilocybin Measure 109 features for a given period of time. There's a lot of jurisdictions that are doing this, and the time that I've seen a temporary ban is ranging from 1 to 2 years. I think 2 years is the highest that I've seen so far. Finally, if council wanted to, council could choose to allow the production and treatment centers in the city limits by default by not granting consent. So this would require the county to change its ordinance to take the city of Grants Pass out of the implementation of that ordinance. And the only drawback to that is that the OHA isn't going to be done with their rulemaking until the end of the year. And that the November election is going to happen before that. So you're not necessarily sure exactly what you're going to be opting into. There's a pretty good idea. It'll have a direct impact on local rulemaking and regulations, time, place, and manner regulations. And staff would need to begin drafting time, place, and manner regulations for the siting of these centers and for manufacturing. And OHA is going to get to look at all of these rules, and OHA is basically going to get to vet them as well. So August 1st, it should say August 3rd. It's the last day to, August 3rd is the last day that the explanatory statements, the ballot statements need to be approved. August 10th is the last day to refile any revised explanatory statements, and August 19th is the last day for a governing body to file a referral text or prepared ballot title. So the call to action date is tonight, and the call to action is really at your discretion. Again, when I put this presentation together, it was centered around the county's request for consent. So with that, I turn it over to Mayor Council.
Thank you. Are there questions? Vanessa, then Valerie.
Can you please explain how by default entering the allowance, how that may affect local decision making?
So if the reason it's going to affect local decision making is because OHA is going to start issuing licenses starting next January. It's going to be a rather quick turnaround from the time that they finish their rulemaking to when they start issuing licenses. And so when they start issuing licenses, municipalities and counties are going to have reasonable time, place, and manner regulations ready to go, so they're able to kind of determine where they want these businesses to be cited and where they don't want them to be cited. So it's kind of a quick turnaround. That's really, everything is just going to happen kind of quickly. Not to say that it can't be done, but it's really a matter of the time, place, and manner regulations and where municipalities are going to want these centers or manufacturing places.
Valerie.
Yeah, I just want clarification. So if we do anything other than what the county has, we would have to file our own. I just say because I just read like Medford is going for a 2-year, putting it off for 2-year postponement or whatever. So if we chose anything different, we would have to write up our own. Is that correct?
So if you chose to consent to one measure and not to another, you wouldn't have to submit that to the voters. You would have to do time, place, and manner regulations that would be vetted by OHA. Drafting its own ordinances, yes, would require getting everything ready for a ballot. Temporary prohibition would also involve going to a ballot. And then allowing production and treatment centers by doing nothing does not require going to the ballot because we're already opted in pursuant to the statute.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions? All right. We'll open this up to the public. Is there anybody who wanted to comment on this tonight? Come up and state your name.
Kathy Millard. I really hope that we don't get these here, the mushrooms. We're dealing with a lot with drugs already.
Rika Brown, Grants Pass. What I didn't hear in this presentation was any reason why we should not allow ourselves to be opted into the state law. Psilocybin and hallucinogens in general are not terribly popular, and they don't cause a lot of problems out there. Your problems are with meth and heroin, which is common and everywhere. But, you know, we've always had access to hallucinogenic mushrooms, but very few people want to use them. And the ones who need to use them, the ones this measure was written for, are the depressed and people with other mental conditions that can be clarified and, you know, brought back, you know, given a kickstart by using hallucinogen products. It's a medicine. And it's best used as a medicine, and it will probably be much more used as a medicine than anything else. Because we just don't have much of a black market in mushrooms. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this issue? All right, we'll close public comment and turn it back over to the council for discussion. Vanessa?
I think in order for us to have an honest conversation about this topic, we have to clearly define what this would and would not allow. By not consenting to the county's ordinance, this does not allow the unfettered use of psilocybin. It does not create a consumer market. It does not allow for import or export. It does not allow for a gold rush situation. Manufacturers, service center ownership groups must be greater than 50% Oregon residents with additional rules against monopolization. Facilitators have to be Oregon residents for a minimum of 2 years. This does not allow usage within 1,000 feet of a school. This does not allow manufacture without the landlord's permission. And that's just a few of the rules based on 49 approved pages already. Just a few things that this does allow. It allows for local governments to establish rulemaking on hours of operation, location, and operation of licensees. It does allow for supervised, accessible mental health treatment, an issue our community regularly asks us to act on. This does allow for the creation of jobs and economic velocity within a legitimate framework governed by state and local government. There is an additional rulemaking session, as stated, scheduled for later this year. And although the rulemaking is not yet completed, if any local leadership took the time to read the 49 pages of already approved rules, it gives a general sense of where the regulatory framework is headed. For anyone who's spent even a few minutes reading about the supermajority opinion from the scientific community, it's that this substance is being hailed as a breakthrough treatment to many people who otherwise are treatment resistant. The effect of this substance seems to have profound effects on treating depression, suicide, PTSD, substance abuse, trauma, end-of-life cancer anxiety, and more. Now, I support people seeking the care that they deem that's best for them. I would never get in the way of someone seeking treatment for their depression at the pharmacy, and I won't get in the way here. Among the ways that mental health can be treated, it really seems like a low-hanging fruit based on the efficacy. With all of that said, I do not consent being included in the county's ordinance, and I support the council moving forward on establishing local rules.
Joel?
I would like to start out with the recommendations at the state level from the Oregon Health Authority. I know we had a lot of these same concerns with the COVID virus in terms of the trials and the treatment trials. There's about 11 statements here from the Oregon Health Authority. The Oregon Health Authority should gather additional information from the Western scientific literature to aid in developing best practices. The OHA should consider strength of evidence and risk of bias in developing a treatment framework, especially given, and this is an important word, the early stage of most treatment trials. They should consider an ongoing review mechanism. They should consider how consumers and providers are informed of the potential negative effects that can occur during and after psilocybin administration. I can read the rest of them if you're interested in them. The trials are very limited, like limited to 25 individuals. They haven't gone for long duration, and they don't cover all aspects of the diverse population that we have. There's some folks that have dealt with the issue for a long time. I was going to quote from this is a clinic in Las Vegas. Mental state changes, however, may occur after just one instance of abusing. This is abusing, or they may never occur. So what is abusing given the limited trials? What dose is not appropriate? We don't know. The emotional and psychological changes associated with the drug are unpredictable, which is part of what makes this drug dangerous. A lot of dangerous drugs are prescribed. One of the things that we in our medical clinic, and we had, when we started out from Dr. Moline, 3,000 patients, so we had 1 out of every 10 people in Grants Pass at our clinic. And then we also participated in the most advanced CBC Plus program that was put on by Medicare. And that involved, and with incentives, for screening mental health once a year for every patient. The key to mental health issues is to catch it early and treat it, and not to let it go. And there are a lot of effective treatments. This shows great promise. To okay it right now, I think would be irresponsible and not in tune with the medical part of the community. When I asked my wife, who was a medical provider, what she thought, she said, well, first thing I'd tell you is it's federally illegal, and I have a drug license to prescribe controlled substances from the feds, and I would be violating my own license if I prescribed it. And then I talked to my daughter, who's national vice president of, the name of her company slips me. But anyway, it's a worldwide health organization. And they have doctors, and they also are help clinics like the Mayo Clinic and things like that to deal with different health issues. And I asked what her opinion was, and she said we probably need to wait until we get a little more research. And it looks promising, which is good. The other thing that Judy told me was if it's illegal, I'm not sure the insurance will pay for it. The other thing is if there's any other county that opts in Oregon, of our 3,000 patients, we didn't have anybody get to this severity. But if they do need it, there's going to be a place in Oregon that they can get treated, because not all of Oregon's going to opt out. And there's going to be risks associated with that, but they can go. So what happens when you have any acute medical condition, and this would have to be acute, you go to an area of specialty. So if I got acute cancer back in the Midwest at Iowa, I go to the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester. If I have a serious health problem here, I go to OHSU or the Bay Area. I don't get treated in Grants Pass. My last point, which is unfortunate, and I don't feel good about it, Oregon ranks 47th out of 50 in mental health services and mental health professionals. There's a lot of people now, enrollment in mental health is going down. So as part of our advanced program with Medicare, we had an embedded psychologist in our practice that would deal with anxiety and depression, because a lot of people have that. We went through 3 of them because they get burned out. And we had a hard time finding one. So what you're talking about is putting together a treatment center in an area that has deficient professional resources, with inadequate trials, with other resources that are going to be available within the state. And so at a minimum, I would suggest that we delay it 2 years for the city of Grants Pass. In the meantime, if there's a need for that, those people will have a place they can go to in the state of Oregon, I'm sure, and if they want to take those risks, and hopefully those risks are known and they know what they are before they proceed. But the most important thing I want to leave with you is not about this treatment, but if you have depression, don't ignore it. Treat it early, catch it early, get screened, and go to your primary care and take care of it before it deepens. It's just like a lot of other diseases. So at a minimum, I would either opt in with the county, or I would delay it for 2 years and let these trials make some sense. In the meantime, those people that have the mental health resources, those communities that have that, they would be available to our citizens.
Valerie?
Yeah, I am going to just simply say that I think it does show promise, but I don't want to be the person to put Josephine County out to be the first one to jump on board. I think that we jumped on board with 110 without the rules written up, and we've seen consequences as a result of that, and so I don't want to make the same mistake with 109. They don't have the rules written up. I agree with what Joel said. There will be places that will not opt out. So there will be places for people to go, and I don't think we have the mental health services, and I don't think we have the time, place, and manner and ability and facilities to step up and take this one on. So I am going to say I'm willing to opt in with the county, and basically all we're doing is opting in, is saying let the people vote. You know, we're not saying yes, we're saying let the people vote. And I can guarantee between now and November, there'll be lots of information that comes out about that information. But I hesitate to jump in. I have seen the result of the passage of 110 when we thought, well, this sounds promising, and the results of that. And so I am not ready to, support 109, and I want it to go to the vote of the people. So I would say the easiest way right now would be just to go with the county and opt in to theirs.
Rick?
I also agree. By the comments made by Councilor King and Councilor Lovelace, and I will be voting no on this. Thank you. Well, I'll be
There's no motion at this time, Rick, but we understood that you are supporting opting in with the county.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Rob?
Yeah. So just, I guess, to clarify, I think something that Vanessa stated that I think needs to be possibly reiterated. These treatment centers, the proposed treatment centers, would not be increasing unfettered access to psilocybin. It would create a supervised treatment alternative. Basically, the mushrooms are all over the state, and anyone who is curious or wants to use them can be using them right now. So having treatment centers where doctors and therapists are recommending particular patients for this therapy does not all of a sudden create a drug situation that is out of control. These drugs are here now, the mushrooms are here now. It does the exact opposite. It actually would control them, and they would be used under the auspices of a therapist or a physician. So, currently, different people have different opinions, but the current federal drug approval process is extremely flawed and working very poorly. Money drives a lot of that, those issues of what gets approved, what gets approved quickly. There's so many examples. Vioxx was completely approved drug. In the first few years it came along, 140,000 heart attacks, 60,000 people died from it. That's a fully approved, federally approved drug. The saddest part about that was our federal government was informed that there were major problems, and they chose to ignore it along the way. Merck ended up being fined in a series of rulings almost $5 billion for falsifying trials and data and so forth. So the federal program is not really a great model for what is safe necessarily and what is effective. And there are a lot of MDs, and I could quote a lot of them that would say that. But I really think that as city councilors, we can't do anything about that, nothing, nor can the county commissioners. But I think that the best thing that we can do is stay out of the doctor-patient relationship. Last summer, there were several MDs in Grants Pass who were prescribing ivermectin as part of a treatment plan for their symptomatic COVID patients. The local hospitals, really had essentially no outpatient treatment for people with COVID. Around here, we didn't even offer the monoclonal antibodies. People in Grants Pass were told, you got to go somewhere else to get monoclonal antibodies. And that actually was an approved treatment. But our local hospital didn't want to do it, so we had to drive people out of the area to get it. But more specifically, we had lots of doctors, or I shouldn't say lots, but I know of at least several, who were prescribing ivermectin, and it got to the point, due to federal government pressure, that there were no local pharmacies who would fill the prescriptions. So our government was getting in the way of the doctor-patient relationship. We had people that had to drive to Roseburg, to a compounding pharmacy up there, where they would make the ivermectin for them. We actually ended up with essentially an underground network of neighbor-to-neighbor people helping others get ivermectin if they wanted it or needed it. And the ivermectin was coming in from India and Mexico. It was just crazy that, again, our government applied pressure that jumped in between the doctor-patient relationship, and people were not allowed or not able to get the treatment their own doctors were recommending for them. This is a very similar situation that we would be in, because 109 essentially does exactly the opposite. It makes above board prescribed and supervised psilocybin treatment sessions available for people whose doctors or therapists recommend them. And I don't think there's anyone on the city council that's qualified to get in between any doctor and their patient. The current treatments for depression and PTSD, we know are not working very well. They may be working for some, and I'm sure they've saved some lives. According to Cost of War project at Brown University, suicides among post-9/11 veterans are 4 times as high as combat deaths in that war, in the War on Terror. Current treatments are not working well for the majority of people who actually need treatment. If they were, we wouldn't be having those types of issues. There's a site out there now, there's a website, SSRI stories. SSRIs are serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. It's basically antidepressants, Zoloft, Paxil, et cetera, et cetera. There's a site that actually ties together 7,000 violent events in the United States linked to these antidepressants, including over 50 school shootings and so forth. So the current antidepressants are not, the current choices are not doing well for many people. And what was really interesting, the more research that I did on this, is that what was never really tested with the current antidepressants was when people tried to get off them. As soon as people got off them, they were out of the trials. But that's when many of the biggest problems happen, is people trying to get off these drugs. So they can be very, very addictive. Psilocybin is known not to be addictive. I'll just read one quote from a young man in his teens. When he tried to get off the antidepressants, he described it as a sensation of all the panic attacks he didn't have while on the drugs being bottled up inside of him and now coming out at an uncontrollable rate. So, again, the current drug, they're not working extremely well. There's a lot of people who don't do well on them. There's a lot of people who can't get off them once they're on them, which was never actually talked about in the clinical trials. And psilocybin appears to be a really, really excellent option for many of these people. And I'm not sure I would be okay with people, large amounts of people. I guess from a human rights perspective, I'd be okay with it, but I'd be concerned if large amounts of people were going out in the woods and doing unsupervised psilocybin. That is not at all what 109 is about, okay? 109 is about doctors and therapists treating specific patients they feel that psilocybin would be the best option for. And I'm not qualified to tell those doctors and those patients that that's not right. And I don't believe any of the counselors are qualified to do that either. It's about medical freedom.
Joel?
So this, a doctor and a patient still have a relationship regardless of whether this goes to the voters or not. And they can still, if they decide to violate the federal law, or if they think that the patient's going to benefit from this treatment, the treatment will be available in the state. So the patient-doctor relationship is not being invaded at all. The other thing, I think, all we're talking about is having the voters vote on it. We're not talking about the medical positive benefits, which there's some, or the medical risks, which there are some. And for us to stand up here as medical experts on one side or the other and try to debate that is, as Rob said, probably not appropriate. But it is appropriate, I think, if we move forward that, and there's some risks involved for Grants Pass, especially with their status of their health services for mental health, that the voters vote on it. I think that's all we're asking.
Vanessa?
We have this brand new oncology center here in Grants Pass, and I think it's very shameful for anyone to say to a patient receiving cancer treatment who potentially is facing the end of their life with unsurmountable anxiety and grief to say, well, to treat that, you can drive to Ashland. That's really unfortunate.
So along with that, Vanessa, my wife was a hospice
Joel,
nurse.
Joel, it's
Point
not
of
your
order,
turn yet.
I have the
Okay.
floor.
Okay, I'd like to go.
With that being said, I move to deny the resolution granting consent to Josephine County to apply Ordinance 2022-002 and Ordinance 2022-003 within the Grants Pass city limits and allow both the manufacture of psilocybin and psilocybin treatment centers subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions.
Is there a second?
Second, Brian.
Second from Brian. Is there a discussion on the motion? Which I think aligns with item 5 on the, if people are looking at the paperwork. Joel?
Well, I just wanted to say, my wife was also a hospice nurse, and she served people that were dying all throughout the county in their homes. People with AIDS, people with cancer, people with a lot of things. And you know, the medical profession, especially the nursing profession, is death is a process, and it can be unhealthy or it can be healthy, but it is a process. Hospice does a really fine job, and what Rob said is, you know, people use it all the time. Well, they're still going to use it all the time. Whether you pass this or opt out, there's going to be people that go out there and pick it and use it regardless. So it doesn't ban that. I mean, it would be illegal, but it's happening today, as he said, and it's going to continue to happen. It's not going to stop. So I stand really firm in my position. We either need to delay it 2 years. We need to put it to the voters for a vote. And that vote can either be delay it for 2 years or opt out. I'm okay with either one.
Rob?
I don't know that our voters are any more savvy or qualified to get between doctors and patients than anyone on the council. You know, doctors were absolutely reassured by the pharmaceutical industry that opioids were not addictive. And that is why the Sackett family and others were found guilty of fraud, because we know that they're guilty, that we know that they are extremely addictive, and they can be extremely dangerous. And if anyone on the council ever needed a knee replacement, and their doctor were to prescribe opioids for the pain afterwards, I don't believe it should be up to the voters whether or not that person gets the pain relief that they need. It's up to the doctor, it's up to the patient, and it's so many studies have shown that the psilocybin is extremely promising. It has helped many people that were not helped by the conventional therapies. I guess the thing that concerns me most is that you've got a medical model that wants to treat people essentially every day with some drug for their depression, and the psilocybin is extremely inexpensive. Most of the treatment that I've heard about talks about using it very infrequently. In other words, it's closer to, it's not a daily treatment, it's something that will help you get over the need for daily treatment. As a result, there's not a lot of money involved there. When there's not a lot of money involved there, I don't feel that it's very likely that our drug agencies are going, and the drug companies are going to move forward and go after this, because there's no pot of gold for them in it. This is inexpensive. This is very helpful for many. It's available. It does have a history of helping people. And again, all of those things are interesting. There may be reasons that I may want to use it if a doctor were to prescribe it to me. There are certainly the reasons that any patient in Josephine County should be able to acquire it if their doctor has prescribed it for them or their therapist.
Kurt, did you want to talk?
Sure. My position's unchanged. I would support the prohibition of the manufacture, but I would not support the prohibition of the service centers. I think we should allow the therapy and let the medical industry work that system out. I am confident that the state will not allow us to establish opium dens in the city. I'm confident that there will be controls and that people will not leave the service center until they are returned to a sober state. So I'm not sure how I'm supposed to vote for this. Yeah, I guess I would vote yes, even though I'm against the manufacturer. And we would put it to the vote later.
Okay.
All right, well, I think it would be helpful for us to debate the motion instead of the merits of the drug. So you have multiple options that were presented to you tonight, and the current motion is to deny the resolution granting consent to Josephine County and then allowing the manufacture and treatment within the city limits.
Okay.
Rob?
Okay. Well, I think I agree with what I think I heard Kurt say. I'm a little bit concerned about legalizing the manufacturing facilities. I don't necessarily see the need for that. I don't necessarily see how that specifically helps our local population. And I don't see how that necessarily furthers the doctor-patient relationship. So I'm in favor of half of Vanessa's motion of establishing the service centers and keeping that decision between doctor and patient. As far as the manufacturing facilities, I don't necessarily see how that benefits patients because I'm sure that the product will be available at a reasonable cost to any therapist or doctor that wants to pass those costs on to their patient. So I'm in favor of half of her motion, but I guess not the first half, not the 002 part, if I got these numbers right. The manufacturer part, I guess, is the 002 part, and that's, but I am very much in favor of, in other words, putting 002, I guess, allowing the 002 to go through with the county's vote makes sense to me, but I wouldn't want to, I don't really want to include the 003 part, the service centers, in the county's vote. Was that clear, Sarah? I'm glad. I wasn't sure if it came out clearly. Okay.
It was clear to me, and if this comes around again, your motion would be in support of item number 3. DJ.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll keep this brief because I think all the information's out there. I'm in favor of the motion on the table, both for the treatment facilities and manufacturing. Treatment facilities, as Rob just stated very plainly, as Vanessa has stated very plainly, I'm in support of that. Furthermore, the manufacturing aspect, two things that I think about. The industry of production. We live in an area that might be able to produce these products for theoretically thriving industry. If we opt out for manufacturing, we might miss out on that opportunity. Furthermore, I think local manufacturing might provide more reasonable options for purchasing for therapies, as in they're not going to be shipped from out of state, or, well, not out of state, obviously, at this point, because I think Oregon is the pioneer for this. My theory is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the more local the production is, the more price control that the area might have for these therapies. So I'm in favor of the motion on the table. Thank you.
Vanessa.
I did want to talk a little bit about the manufacturing and why I do support it. Councilor Fazer just made a fantastic point that I do, it only makes sense that if it was grown locally, that the treatment could potentially be cheaper for patients. This is an opportunity for folks to make a living. This is an opportunity for folks in the area to make a living. It does require a licensure from the state. This is not unregulated manufacture. The approved rules even they regulate how you can grow it. You cannot grow it outdoors, what type of soil, what kind of things you can use. As well, once it leaves the manufacturing site, there is a really strict chain of command to retain your licensure, to send it to a laboratory for laboratory testing. So with the already approved rules, I feel really confident in that process and that it has no potential to get out of control.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Joel?
I just want to quote again the state's own thing. OHA should consider the range of research on cultivating and characterizing psilocybin containing mushrooms and developing a regulatory framework. Because of toxicity concerns, OHA should initially consider prioritizing cultivation of the mushroom and use of grain-based substitutes for cultivation rather than dung, poop, or wood. And OHA should explore feasibility and capability of employing modern DNA sequencing-based techniques to identify fungal and fungal tissues for use in product licensing and quality control. And last of all, OHA should facilitate the development of screening requirements for contaminants such as residual solvents, disinfectants used in the extraction or sterilization, toxic metals, pesticides, antibiotics, herbicide, livestock medicines, bioaccumulation contaminants, pathogenic microbes such as viruses, bacteria, parasites, other fungi, and microbial produced toxins. So I think we're at least 2 years out, and I would hate to see us proceed. But anyway, let's put it to the vote, and if the citizens want to do it and they know the risks ahead of time with their doctor and they want to do that, there will be places in Oregon to do that regardless.
Can you ask Warren, our chief?
Excuse me, it's not time for public comment right now. No, I'm sorry. I will ask you to be removed from the room.
He deals with the drugs all day
Chief,
long.
I will remind you one more time, it's not appropriate to make outbursts from the audience. I'll ask the chief to remove you from the room if you make another outburst. All right, council, barring further discussion, we have a motion on the table which would be to deny the resolution granting consent to Josephine County to apply the ordinances 2022 and 02 and 03 within the city limits and allow the manufacture and treatment centers both in the city limits. So is there any further discussion? All right. Vanessa, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
And Joel?
No.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Val?
No.
DJ?
Yeah.
Rick?
No.
And Brian?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-3. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Yeah.
So just to reiterate for council, this is a vote to opt into the measure 109. So so this requires no action from staff in terms of putting anything on the ballot. The next steps for staff will be to craft reasonable time, place, and manner regulations as it pertains to both the manufacturer and for treatment centers. And we'll bring that forward as the year continues.
All right, I am going to make an agenda change here because we have Commissioner DeYoung here to speak on the next, actually not the next item, it's item E on your agenda. So we are going to move forward with item E. That's going to be on page 377 of your packet. And JC is going to start us off.
Before I get started, there are some materials that were put in your packet, and I was planning on everybody potentially being here. So for those that aren't here, I just emailed you some of the items, as well as there was an email today from the Grants Pass and Josephine County Chamber of Commerce that came in about 11:30, which I also slipped into your packet, not knowing if you would have email before this. Okay. All right, a lot of this is just going to be a refresher and going over the previous provided information about the 3% sales tax that the county proposal has out there. Technical difficulties. All right. So subject and summary, obviously the county proposed sales tax, and this is part of the #1 goal for 2022 of permanent funding for public safety services and the enhanced community safety. So a little background here, the county sheriff came and spoke to council on March 14th. The county commissioner spoke to council on June 20th. There is a 3% sales tax proposal, which estimated will give the city of Grants Pass $8 million in revenues. The timeline, the county will need materials and filing items in early August, and just kind of giving them a little courtesy, and to the clerks by August 18th for the deadline for the November ballot. And so I'm going to go over the terms just as a refresher, and that's one of those items in your packet, and it's just on the top if you want to read along with me. So there's a 3% sales tax on scheduled items for retail sales. Retail sales excludes groceries, pharmaceuticals, tobacco, gasoline, motor vehicle above $2,000. Professional services, eating, drinking establishments, entertainment and recreation, administrative support, and other services. And as a continuation, so money collected in Josephine County stays in Josephine County. All revenue is dedicated to law enforcement, cannot be raised unless voter approved. The merchant keeps 5% of collected monies to offset costs of collection. The revenue is divided between City of Grants Pass, City of Cave Junction, and Josephine County based on population. And those are the percentages as far as the population estimates. The tax would begin on April 15th of the calendar year and ends October 15th, leaving 6 months without sales tax for locals. Depending on the jurisdiction, it would relieve property taxes, only applies to the first $2,000, and it would capture out-of-town money and unclaimed income. And so your call to action at your discretion would be the 3 options here of not to support, support county proposal, endorse, promote, and partner with Josephine County and Cave Junction. I don't know what questions I can take and or answer regarding this, but if you have anything that I can do, I will answer those now.
Does anybody have any questions for JC? Val?
I just want clarification. So basically, you're asking us to, whether we support putting it on a ballot, correct? I mean, that's basically what we're asking, because at this point, it has to be voted on, correct? So any sales tax or tax has to go on. So what we're doing is we're basically saying that if we endorse it or support it, we're supporting their putting it on the ballot so that the people have the option to vote on it, correct?
Yeah, and which is why it was kind of hard to come up with an example motion, because what is the degree of the support that you're willing to give? So there's kind of a grading scale there of yes and no, and then of the yes to support, how far are you going to go to support that?
Okay.
We have Commissioner DeYoung here requested 10 minutes to speak on the issue and give us an update on where they're at the county. So if you'd like to come forward, Dan, make sure the mic is on.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to come to you again today, City Council and Mayor and staff. What I gave a handout a little bit earlier, we're always constantly moving on this thing. We have not landed on this particular proposal or any other proposal for that matter. We did have 4 public forums, 2 in Ambassador. We started in Ambassador. We went to Wild River Pizza in Cave Junction, had one. Directly after Wild River Pizza, the Sheriff and I went to the Cave Junction City Council, gave a presentation. We had a workshop forum, if you will, in Merlin, Oregon, and one back at Ambassador. They were well attended for forums. Usually a lot of these, town halls and stuff, you get 3 or 4 people and that's it. These we had 30 to 35 people at just about every one of them. In fact, Cave Junction City Council chambers, there was probably 25 people, and we don't get that at our weekly business sessions, but they certainly did there. And what I've given you, one of the handouts here is the Josephine County Law Enforcement Forum feedback. I think it deserves, one of the things the chamber, met with the chamber yesterday with Josie Malloy and Kate Lasky. And one of the things that their question was, you didn't vet any of these, you didn't vet anything at all. And I says, well, and we did, and I thought, but they have a pretty good point. What was the result of our vetting of all these different ideas? Now we had 7 that we brought in from the forum. Those were brought to us at the forum, and try this, try that. And then we went back and vetted them. I'll start right at the top, and the timeline, as you can see, we have to do something fairly quick in order to meet the statutory deadlines in order to put it on the ballot. That we need to, I'll read it, Sheriff's Office is budgeted for present level law enforcement services up to June 20th of 2023. The mission of the Board of Commissioners is to present a permanent law enforcement funding option to Josephine County voters in the November 22 election. Process to place the ballot measure on the 22 election will include up to 2 public hearings and a signed resolution. Actually, we have an ordinance, which I've sent a copy of that over, an ordinance by the Board of County Commissioners prior to the August 19th filing deadline with the county clerk in order to meet all the timelines to put this on the ballot in November. The potential solutions, these were ideas that were brought to us at the various forums. And I'll start right off. The 3 most popular ones were law enforcement levy, law enforcement taxing district, and the 3% sales tax. When we captured or we looked at the law enforcement levy, this has been tried an awful lot of times for operation, patrol, or whatever you want to call it, at the sheriff's office level. It's been tried over and over and over again with miserable results. And I grant you, I understand, I thought, why are we getting miserable results? Well, because it's a county-wide ballot. There are 26,000 ballots in the city of Grants Pass. Inside your property tax base, you are covering chief and the city police. When you call 911, you're going to get the chief respond and his department, your police department. You pay dearly for that. So if we send in deal to you, it's almost double taxation, isn't it? You're being taxed for something you're not going to receive, because when you dial 911, unless you're really covered up, and we do have mutual aid agreement back and forth, you're not going to see a deputy at your door at 2 o'clock in the morning. The people in the county are not going to see Grants Pass PD at 2 o'clock in the morning. So let's separate that out. So he says, let's just, for the county law enforcement levy, which would have a sunset, just like any levy does, or for the law enforcement taxing district, which the taxing district would exempt anybody within the city of Grants Pass, because guess what? We're not can't ask you to pay for something you really won't support. So we carved the city of Grants Pass out, and we did the math, and basically what you do is you take your need, which, let's take the $9 million, and then we divide that and do the math under the assessed value outside the city of Grants Pass. The assessed value of property outside the city of Grants Pass. And what it comes up with is $1.87 per thousand. Now, in the county, that would mean the voters would be asked to approve 58 cents, tax base, can't be changed by Measure 5, 31 cents library district, 11 cents animal shelter, 93 cents for the local option tax for juvenile detention and the jail operations, and then we're going to throw another $1.87 at them on the ballot. I can guarantee you, I've been here a long time and I've done a lot of elections, if you go over $1 on anything, you're out. And $1.87 is just not heard of. It just would not pass. So we basically crossed off law enforcement levy and the law enforcement taxing district. The district is the same as the levy, except it doesn't have an expiration. It would go on for perpetuity. Any of these things, even if it's a 3% sales tax, anything that we fall on, besides our own sword, but anything that we fall on can be repealed by the vote of the people. It'd be by petition. They can petition to take the 3% sales tax off, say, man, it's not working. So you just do that, put it on the ballot, it referred to the voter via petition, and it can come off. It's up to the voter to either put it in or take it off. We had looked at business licenses for cannabis production. That includes recreational, medical, and hemp. In order to get the medical or the recreational people involved in it, they said you got to include hemp. But we've seen a real decline. We've seen a pretty marked decline in cannabis production throughout the valley. Now, not that they don't have it. It's just all gone indoors and with hoop houses instead of out in the agricultural where you're subject to the weather and whatnot. They can grow 3 to 4 crops in a hoop house and they don't have to go out and tend it. So that has unstable future in the local industry. It's going to go up and down. We just don't know what it's going to do. Also, we bump up against the Department of Agriculture when we look at singling out cannabis in the cannabis industry. So we kind of scratched that one off. It wasn't real popular anyway. I don't think very many people understood it. I tried it at the state level before and didn't get any support out of our local representatives and senators in the Capitol. So therefore, if they weren't interested, neither was anybody else in Salem. So that's fine. I've been down that road, spent a lot of time on it, and was very, very disappointed. Countywide transient lodging tax, that's no longer an option. That went away about 2 years ago. So that's no longer an option. And besides that, it wouldn't actually meet the need. If we did it, it does not come anywhere close to the need. Absentee property owner registration fee. Curry County does this and collects approximately $350,000 a year by doing that. Of course, Curry's a lot smaller than we are, but they've got a lot of absentee owners over there. We figured just estimated with the amount of people that we have that don't live here. They don't live here. Some of them don't even own their own property here. And a lot of those properties are involved in cannabis production. They had no idea. And it's a mess. And it costs a lot of money, both for the solid waste and for law enforcement, to take care of those properties and get them mitigated. The estimated revenue would be only $750,000 for Josephine County. So we don't want to add 2 or 3 things and put them all on the ballot at the same time, because you're going to get the check the no box. Here they come with a whole list of taxes. We'll just check them all no. It's no big deal. Law enforcement commercial activity tax, privilege tax, that's a tax on businesses that have more than 25 employees. That got 0 hands in the air. 0, for an obvious reason. So reading to the back, an ordinance housing imposing a 3% seasonal sales tax on retail activities provides 2.4, and this here again, as your finance director said, it's split up by population. So Cave Junction, which now does not have any revenue to point towards law enforcement, they do they rent a sheriff from us. They have 1 deputy out there. They just renewed that contract for around $130,000 a year, and we place a resident deputy out there that is dedicated to the Illinois Valley. It's only 1. It provides 2.4% of the revenue collected to the city of Cave Junction, estimated $400K. It provides 44% of the revenue, and I think Grants Pass might be 45 or 46% of the population of Josephine County. I'll have to get the real number. But the one I looked at was 44% of revenue collected to the city of Grants Pass, estimated $8 million. Possible levy reduction to the city of Grants Pass property owners to be determined by the city council. That's up to you. I've heard a number of different things thrown around out there, and I'm not going to land on any of them. I'm not going to repeat them because it's not up to me. It's up to you. If you wish to give property tax relief to your constituents, this may be a way that you can do that. Merchants keep 5% of the revenue collected by the business for collecting the tax. I was talking with the Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, and she said, I can't tax my businesses because it's going to hurt them. They'll have to pay the tax. And I said, I hope that a person that's in business, when they have a 3% sales tax, it's a pass-through. Like when I'm pumping my own gas or getting the gas in my car, I'm the guy paying all the road tax and gas tax associated with that pump. Mr. Colvin or Mr. Andretti up there that now owns Aero Fuels, he doesn't just eat that. It's not coming out of his pocket. It's a strict pass-through, and we are willing, this proposal would give that person, that merchant, 5% of what they collect. I think the smartest thing to do, or the way to do it, if I was the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm not, would be to, rather than say we're just flat out against this, I would say I would offer to help my businesses, my small businesses, if they're having a struggle getting this thing moved into position on April the 15th. And if they didn't understand that you should really give them a little bit of some training and some help for the transition if this is the way it lands and the voter decides to do that. I think that would be the function of the Chamber of Commerce, would be to help those merchants to figure out how this thing works, rather than just flat out and say no. But that's neither here nor there. It spreads the burden of law enforcement funding to include all the citizens and visitors. It's a fair tax. I don't care what anybody says. A sales tax is a fair tax because it touches everybody. If you don't spend money, you don't spend a lot of tax. If you spend a lot of money, you spend more tax. That's for you to figure out on an individual basis. Is there going to be one of the big drawbacks that I see, and I think it's a temporary drawback if it even occurs, because everybody that I talk to, other than a very small amount of people, and that's pirating to Jackson County. I get that. I am really concerned about that. Mr. Pell, Councilor Pell, you brought this up, and I agree with you 100%. I don't know that at $5 and something cents a gallon that it will work that way. I think it might at the very beginning, but once you get the thing off and running, people are going, you know what, I didn't even notice. I went to dinner with my wife the other day and it was $50. And the wife looked at me, she said, it's $1.50 taxes. And I said, yeah, I got that. She said, so how much are you going to tip the waitress? And I said, $12. So the $1.50 was kind of minuscule to me, but it's just an example. One of the things that came up, and I think Councilor Pell brought it up, and that was internet sales. Internet sales, and I put down here that internet sales, it can be included in the retail activities tax. It's in, this is the hot off the press right before I came over here, so I haven't even read what it says in there about internet sales, but we got some information from Amazon and people like that as to whether or not internet sales would be taxed at that level, and they send us a check. And basically, throughout the United States, when we talked to the people, or Wally did, he said, yeah, just tell me what your address is, and I'll tell you whether you're exempt or not. And they have you, if you don't think with these huge companies, and taxes are very important to huge companies, and they're important to municipalities, that they don't have a way to push the button and know everything you do, you're wrong. And we just, well, here's a hypothetical address. Nope, you're not in it. But if you live just outside, nope, you're not in it. Yes, you are. And they could do that immediately, and they would apply the tax and then send us a check for however much that is. Another one that came up, and it was pretty interesting because it was over here at Ann Basker, was vehicle registration fee. And it was $50 per registration due at renewal. This would generate approximately $4.5 million. Can only be used, but the problem is it can't be used for law enforcement. It has to go, that has to go for street improvement, to build, improve, maintain roads and bridges, and for transportation only. I'd love for it to be that way. And you probably heard that we borrowed some money in order to get us through till July of 2023. We borrowed $300,000 from the road fund over in Public Works. We have to repay that. The sheriff has to repay that. It's an inter company loan, if you will, and it must be paid back because that's your gas tax money, and your gas tax money has to go to roads, nowhere else. Another one, the gas tax, that came up. Well, put 3 cents a gallon on there, that'll work. And the same thing follows with the gas tax. First off, the gas tax got 0 hands in the air. I mean 0. This received no votes. Recreational activity tax, and that was brought up by one of your counselors just the other day, and I added it to it. What it amounts to is it is a tax basically on, if I get this right, Joel, would be like commercial salmon fishermen, that guides on the river, also Hell's Gate excursion, things of that sort. If you had tours of different places, that would probably fall under that too. I don't know how much it would generate, but it really isn't $10 million. So all ideas were presented by community members, and we welcomed everything. We're not done with this, but I'm telling you right now, this right here was drawn up, and we spent a lot of time on it. You can look it over and see if there's anything that concerns you. One of the things we had a very short, and you had a very, Mr. Alley had a very short laundry list, but if you look on page 2, we've extended that list to 14 different exemptions. And one of them is unprepared food, of course, prescription medicine, of course, any interest, including a fee, a state fee or real property, which makes more clarity there, internet access, Telephone exchange access and other telephone services, those are utilities more than anything else. Motor vehicle fuel, of course, that's with the state. Transient lodging, that's out. New light duty motor vehicles. And I don't know where DMV draws that line. But even if you had to pay on a vehicle, it's going to be $60 because it is 3% of the first $2,000. It's $60. Cigarettes and tobacco products, those are all by the state. Liquor, of course, is all by the state. Lottery tickets or shares of the Oregon State Lottery, that's all taxed by the state. Alcohol and beverages, taxed by the state. Psilocybin products and services, we don't even know about that one yet. Marijuana items addressed by Josephine County Code number 3.25. And investment holdings, this one I was quite concerned to a couple of people that I talked to. Investment holdings, which include but are not limited to precious metals and stocks and commodities. Outright gifts is another one. People, if I give something, does the value of that eligible for tax? No, it's not. Outright gifts, meaning the voluntary transfer of products or services to another participant without compensation. So those are the things that we've logged out. And let me go to this back to the investment holdings and precious metals. That particular industry, those industries' investments, they work on 0.1%. So in other words, if my gold is if I'm paying 0.1% more for gold than this guy is, you're buying from me because it's tenths. It's not. So you throw a 3% on that, the whole industry in the valley is gone. They can't compete. They'll have to move out. We don't want that either because there's some long-standing citizens that do that. So you say, well, you're carving all these people, all these things out. When are you going to get paid? Well, I used the example at one of the forums. A lady said, she says, well, I have a barber shop and I have subcontractors. Well, those subcontractors, each barber or hairstylist is a contractor. They have to fill out their own paperwork, and that's who pays the 3%. They charge it and they pay that. But there's also a great number of people, not a vast number of people, but there is, I think, a relatively large amount of people that cut hair in the back room in their flower shop and put the $20 in their pocket. That's the undeclared income that we talk about in the deal here. So, well, are you going to be the library police and go in there and bust everybody for that? No, we're not looking for that. You know why? You know why it's not really a big concern to me? Because it's gone on forever. It's kind of like moonshining. It's going to still be there. It's kind of like illegal pot. It's all legal, but it's going to still, the illegal part of it still makes a lot of money. And uncontrolled. And there's no way to control it. I don't wish to be, in your garage while you're working on somebody's car and getting paid cash. Right? That doesn't have anything to do with me.
Dan, we're closing in on 20 minutes.
Yes, you got
Okay.
it. I just want to, the reason I'm not too worried about it is that person gets that $20. What do they do with it? They go spend it. If they spend it at one of our stores, one of our retail outlets, one of the bigger stores, it's just no problem. That's where the 3%. A dollar changes hands in society about 7 times a day. And every time, if there's one person that doesn't do that, it really doesn't affect the overall outcome. So I would, like I said, I think we haven't landed yet, but in all the conversations we've had, I think this is the 3% sales tax is the only one that spreads the burden out and it still covers the job, does the job. And I think to me, I think it's important to send it to the voter for their approval. Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions before we open for public comment? No. Check our online guests. Nope. Okay, in that case, did you have something to add? Okay. Okay. This is open for public comment. Is there anyone who wanted to speak on this topic tonight? Come back up to the mic. I think you know how it works.
Rika Brown, Grants Pass. Sales tax is one of the most powerful taxes we have, and it is also the fairest. And we need that power in our sheriff's department and our police department. Might as well get it on the ballot and see what the voters say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this? All right, we will close public comment and turn it back to the council. I wanted to draw your attention, we don't have a representative from the Chamber of Commerce here tonight, but there is a letter on the dais where the Chamber of Commerce Board has said that they do support law enforcement, but that they do not support the idea of a sales tax. And Valerie.
Yeah, I'm just going to start off by saying that the law enforcement and where we were in 2012 was as ugly as it gets, and I don't want to go back there again. I think that the conversation about paying for public safety is a county and citywide discussion because it impacts both of us. I also do believe that the seasonal sales tax does things that no other tax would do. One of the things that we would love to do within the city is find a way to not have to go out every 3 to 5 years for a new levy. I will say in the last several years I've been very involved with that, and I know how much energy it takes to go out there and to drum up the support for our law enforcement. We hear a lot of back the blue, we back the blue, we back our law enforcement, but paying for it is what really shows that we back our blue, because what happens if we get down to the wire is we lose our officers because they will go to other parts of the state where they don't have to wait. Their job is not on the line every 3 to 5 years. So we've seen what happens. I would love an opportunity to talk with the public about options and diversifying so that not everything is put on the property owner. So I personally am in full support of putting this 3% seasonal sales tax on the ballot and having a conversation with the public as to how to diversify and put a fair tax and bring in. I was just down in Texas the last 6 days. I never blinked. I saw taxes on everything I bought. I didn't decide, I'm not going to eat for 4 days because, it was just a part of it. And I pay taxes for them. They don't have income taxes. We pay their taxes. So I think it's time that we have a discussion, especially since we've lost our timber and we are moving towards tourists, and our tourists expect to be safe, that we have a broad discussion about how to have a stable law enforcement in our county. So I'm in favor of supporting and going out and putting this on the ballot because it has to be voted on anyway, and joining in the discussion of how to stabilize law enforcement in our county.
Anyone else wanting to discuss this? Joel?
I'd just like to expand a little bit on the economics and the lack of timber and the multiplier effect economic-wise for producing goods and services actually is fairly great. And so like with timber, $1 stumpage produces like $35 worth of benefit to people and people that build houses out of it, and it puts people to work and all that kind of stuff. The service industry with tourism or retail shops doesn't have that. They have a multiplier effect, but it's not that big. It's like $5 to $10 in terms of multiplying so that $1 spent at Hellgate, which produces a pleasurable experience, but it's not the value added that a manufacturing base does. And so one of the things that we probably need to look at in the long term is, I don't know if it's computer manufactured chips or whatever, but there's some manufacturing base we always need to keep our eyes out open for. In the meantime, we have tourism, and it's very viable, and we need to keep it, and people really enjoy it, and it produces a lot of income and jobs for residents. I'll make it short. I've rambled on too long. I would support putting the sales tax on the ballot. There's winners and losers, and I think everybody needs to decide what that is. And to me personally, the reduction in property taxes, especially for the older people that don't buy a whole lot of goods, and then the sales tax that's produced by out-of-state or out of the county residents. Probably would be a benefit to those folks in their property taxes. But everybody has to decide for themselves. So I would just put them up for a vote. And there's those that win and those that lose in terms of who gets paid and who doesn't, or who pays and who doesn't pay. We went through that with the construction excise tax. And the people that didn't have to pay it were for it, and the people that had to pay it were against it. And so it's the same dynamic here where it's everybody looks at their own self-economic interests.
Rob?
Quick, I mean, first, Dan, I know that you are paid as a county commissioner, and we are not, but I still want to thank you for all the focus and the effort you put into this, because I know that you've been eating, drinking, and sleeping it for a couple of years. So, and a lot of details you worked out, obviously. The last time we had a sales tax on the ballot, and it went down 78-22 or whatever it was. Probably the biggest, objection from the Chamber of Commerce and other major players in town was the potential for the piracy issue, people driving to Medford and so forth. And at that time, a creative solution that I guess Dan came up with was, well, we'll do a 5-county deal, so that people in a certain region will be paying it. Well, the way I look at it, at least 3.5 counties opted out of that 5-county deal, and I call Curry County half county because it's only 22,000 people and there's really no shopping there. So basically, the biggest objection last time is still going to be the biggest objection this time from the Chamber of Commerce and other large business people. So that hasn't been solved. Do we need this? Do we need the money? The county certainly absolutely needs the money. The city has more options. I'm definitely in favor of putting it on the ballot. I quite frankly, and I think everybody knows the handwriting's on the wall, that let's not hold our breath for November to have this fixed by a sales tax vote of yes, because it's pretty unlikely, especially with the chamber coming out against it the way they did. But thank you, and again, the biggest hurdle is still, I believe the biggest hurdle is still there,
All right, Vanessa, excuse me.
I also want to thank you, Commissioner DeYoung, for being here today and looking for a creative solution to this issue. I am deeply sympathetic to what the Sheriff's Office is experiencing in light of the timber receipts disappearing from the county. And I am acutely aware of the issue that happens when law enforcement is removed from society. So I am in support of the Board of Commissioners finding a creative solution to this crisis, the funding crisis. Unfortunately, I don't support the city signing on with this. I have great concerns that our critical public safety services would be vulnerable to consumer spending. It doesn't meet the needs of the Grants Pass Police Division. It does fall short of the amount to currently fund without any potential for growth. And I do have some concerns. Very early on, I've had concerns about a retailer's capability for collection and payment of the tax. I do understand it's a pass-through, but an additional accounting, I have concerns for small business owners. I do support the people of Josephine County and the people of Grants Pass voting on this measure, but I don't support signing on with the city.
Any further discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion, or shall we just move on? Valerie?
I guess, from what I'm hearing, I would actually like to endorse, promote, and partner with Josephine County and Cape Junction, because I think this also answers a big problem that Cape Junction has. This helps us, it helps Cape Junction, it helps the county. So I'll make a motion that we endorse, promote, and partner with Josephine County and Cape Junction to put the sales tax on the ballot in November.
All right, second from DJ. Discussion on the motion? Rob?
I'm not sure what that means exactly, Valerie.
Well, basically, I'm just saying that I endorse putting on a ballot the 3%, and I will be willing to work with Dan and make an educational about the tax base, because I think I've been working on this taxation of public safety for a number of years. To me, it is, I'm personally passionate about the fact that we need to diversify and really look at a solution for Southern Oregon and Josephine County in particular. And obviously it has to be voted on. So I'm willing to endorse and promote, partner with the Josephine County and Cave Junction to put this on the ballot, and then let the voters decide. So that's what I'm saying, is that I'm in favor of it, so I'm willing to put on the ballot. I'm personally willing to fight for it, and nobody else has to do that, but it will be on the ballot, and that will allow the taxpayer, Josephine County, or the voter to decide.
I think the way that the motion was stated, the difference is you could vote tonight to put it on the ballot without your endorsement. The way the motion was made, a yes vote will be that you as a city council endorse the seasonal sales tax. So that's the distinction there.
Yeah, and that's why I was looking at those three choices, because that's what I was reading. I was thinking, yes, I could just say support it, and maybe if it doesn't pass, that what will happen. But I personally would like to endorse, promote, and partner with them, because I think it's imperative that we work with the county and we work together, and I think that's what people need to see, is us working together on the issue.
DJ?
Yeah, I desire to make my endorsement explicit rather than just implied by second in the motion. I agree with Valerie entirely. I want to express public support for the sales tax. I'm willing to join in the effort with Cave Junction and the Board of County Commissioners as us getting together and finding a solution for public safety county-wide. I think this is so important. I think this is a great momentum that we have. I'm willing to get the word out, set up in different areas, come and talk to a city councilor and explain why this is going on the ballot. I think that we should endorse it. I think we should be all in on this. Because we are on the heels of finally having a permanent funding source for public safety, not only in the city limits of Grants Pass and Cave Junction, but the sheriff's office as well.
Rick?
I'm also in favor of endorsing, promoting, and partnering with Josephine County and Cave Junction. I think this is essential. I think this is a turning point for the city and the county if this is not successful. Thank you.
Just so everyone knows, Brian had to leave. Any further discussion on the motion? Rob?
Just to be totally transparent and upfront, regardless of if this motion were to pass, in other words, the quote-unquote Grants Pass City Council supports the implementation of working towards 3%, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going to tell you that when I walk out the door, I'm a private citizen and I may be working against it. So I don't really want to undermine council goals, and I don't really want to do that. But I'm just going to tell you there's a good possibility that even if council says they support it, when I walk out the door of the room, I may not be supporting it.
Any further discussion? All right. The motion was to not just support putting it on the ballot, but to provide a council endorsement. And Valerie, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Vanessa?
No.
Joel?
Well, I have mixed feelings. I definitely want it on the ballot. The county hasn't landed on it yet. So I think I'm going to not endorse it at this point in time, though I would probably vote for it. And then I will make a second motion if this one doesn't pass to put it on the ballot.
Kurt?
Sign me up. Yes.
Rob?
No.
DJ?
Yes.
And Rick?
Yes.
The motion passes 4-3.
I do have a quick question for staff. Is there anything that you require at this time with that passing of that motion?
I think we might just need to know when the deadline is to have some sort of letter in the ballot, in the voters pamphlet. Did you have an answer for that, Dan?
I have one of the things, when you read that, when you read the ordinance that we're getting ready to pass, there is an element in there, one of the lines is if you, as a city council, wish to reduce your levy, say from $1.79 to whatever you want to do, and carve off some of that, we would like to put that in the ballot measure, in the language, as it goes to the voter. So we would need a commitment on that. That's a separate subject. That's for you all. The city of Cave Junction doesn't have a levy or anything that they can give back. So therefore, they aren't concerning that. And also, the county doesn't have anything that we can give back either, because we're only at 58 cents. But that would be, we would like to put, if you're going to do that, how do I say this? This is a sales feature for it, because the people inside the city limits now, they always say, well, what are you going to do for us? Well, if we're going to give you, if this measure gives you $8 million, and you right now, I don't know what your thing is, I understand you're about 2 million short. Well, that'll cover your 2 million, and then also the 6 million that is also that you will get, you can actually put that back into your general fund, because the 8 million that you now take out of the general fund, you will be coming from a different source. So that's the important part when you consider whether or not you can give back something to your voters. It was discussed at the 3-on-1s. One of the people said, well, I think we can give away the whole thing, the whole levy. And I don't know, that's up to you. But then I think it was City Manager Kubik said, if we find that we have met our contingency and you put it into the rainy day or the inflation fund or whatever you're going to do with whatever's left after you give a discount, if it comes to that, you can always, as a city council, say, you know what, we're going to have a kicker check this year. I mean, they chain you to your podium because you're really doing something, you're giving something back, and because you've done it from another different direction with a different group of people helping you pay for your law enforcement. Thank you very much for your time.
Your deadline to file is August 18th?
Say again?
Your deadline to file this is August 18th?
Yeah, we're going to put that on, we are pending Wally asked me, he says, well, do you want to do this right now? And I said, no, I want to see what the city of Grants Pass has to say. And so I'm going to take away your motion and your vote tonight. And I realize there's always going to be some trepidation, and I get that. I hope in the next 105 days or whatever it is till the voting, you're going to see a real all-out campaign from myself and the sheriff, very much as we did with the levy to fund the jail. And we're going to go out there with the truth, and we're going to answer every question we can. We're going to get together with, and I hope I extended to the membership of the Chamber of Commerce. I don't think I heard from the membership. I think we heard from the board of directors. I don't know that's what we really heard from all the members. So we've got a lot of work to do. We're going to lift the water. So I appreciate, the amount of support you pushed towards us tonight. This gives me hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Augustus has a comment.
So JC was asking essentially for council if there's anything on staff's part that would be helpful in terms of the production of figures and the production of materials in order to facilitate helping council get the word out in terms of the facts of what this tax would do.
Okay, DJ's been waiting for a minute. Go ahead, DJ.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to kind of reflect a little bit of what Dan said. I don't see this as being a selling point as in, enticing sort of a product. I see this as being part and parcel to this whole thing. And what I'm referring to is a theoretical reduction or elimination of the temporary public safety levy. I think that also in response to JC's inquiry, yes, I think there's a lot of work that both staff and us as counselors can do, but I don't think that that's really a perfectly noticed, if you will. And then if it's not, I would suggest that we prioritize the discussion about what can be done on staff's end and on council's end, so we can articulate this as well as possible in the ballot, as Commissioner DeYoung has mentioned. Thanks.
Joel?
I think one of the things we need to do on agenda review, put it on the agenda review for the offset of the levy. And then I think you already have the figures, but to keep those fresh in our minds in terms of having a tax neutral, where taxes don't, the total tax doesn't go up, but the tax would come from the sales tax instead of property tax, and what that would look like.
All right, I agree. I think we have a little bit of time, just a couple weeks here, to buy ourselves some time to review how we want to handle that portion of the levy. Is there anything further on this topic? All right. Let's jump back on our agenda. We need to jump back to item C regarding the natural hazard mitigation plan. Is Emily our main presenter on this? All right, great.
I have something in my ear, so if I pause or just stare, just I'm processing something in my head.
She runs out the door. If you run out the door, we'll wonder what's going on.
Do you want to give them just a brief update about what you've been working on tonight?
I'm going to turn it down. Yeah, so it's a good sign that I'm here. For those of you, there's a few who maybe don't know me, but I'm Josephine County Emergency Manager and
You got to speak up in the mic.
County Emergency Manager, and we have the Cheney Creek incident, which took up some time early today, but told Jason I was feeling comfortable enough breaking away, so I'm here and monitoring and taking some notes and things. So I pause, just give me a second, I'll regroup and come back to you. So I'm here tonight to ask that you consider and hopefully approve the adoption.
Can we check if your mic's on?
Sure. I sound loud to you.
You sounded good to me, but
Okay, do I have to start over?
there we go. Yeah,
Okay.
there's a fire, right?
Yeah, you can ask me about that separately if you want. ODF Facebook page, as well as the County Emergency Management Facebook page, has information on it. I can provide additional information if you want, but it's a good sign that I'm here. So I'm here tonight to ask you to consider the adoption of the Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. The Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, or NHMP, if you aren't familiar with it, happens in an update every 5 years. We've had them in the past. This happened to be the time this spring when it was due for renewal and an update. You, as the City of Grants Pass, as well as the City of Cave Junction, have your own standalone addendum, which is complementary to, but also can stand separate from, the county's complete hazard mitigation plan. When you approve your addendum, you are approving your participation and situation within the whole natural hazard mitigation plan. This is, when it is finally approved, a publicly accessible document, and as in the past, it always lives as a publicly accessible PDF on my county emergency management web pages, as well as wherever you want to have your section or the whole plan available. There's nothing secret in there. There may be something scary in there for people who have moved here recently and don't realize that we have all kinds of hazards. But that's part of the point of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. So it has a couple of purposes. One is public facing and electeds and officials facing. It basically says, hey, if you didn't know, you're an earthquake country, fire country, ice storm country, all kinds of beautiful and wonderful things happen here. Some more challenging than others. So the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan lays out a historic perspective, looking back at natural hazard incidents that have happened, what their financial, economic, social, psychological impact was in the past, looks at current and forecasts a bit, what are we likely to have to face as natural hazards. So again, natural being the key word, if there's anything specifically man-made, let's say a chemical spill, that's not going to be in here. But it's going to be that fire, flood, landslide kind of approach. And there were some changes to note here for this plan. Every 5 years, we get an opportunity to discuss with our contractors, our researchers, our consultants, and each other, do the natural hazards still make sense? Have they changed? Have they shifted or adjusted in impact? And there's numerical ratings that go with that. Are there socioeconomic changes to our county that are significant than there were 5 years ago? Those sorts of things. And then it's an opportunity to review and kind of close out all of the actions and accomplishments and goals that were achieved in the last 5 years. So aside from the public awareness piece, the other purpose of the natural hazard mitigation plan is to force us as jurisdictions to say not just we're aware, but that we're gonna make some action and some progress towards mitigation. And that can be very simplistic in the terms of we're gonna continue to support awareness and education to our public. And you can have some goals around that. Or it can be very specific and intense, like the water treatment plant, for example. So there's some goals and actions that cross over between county and city jurisdictions, and then there are some that are specific to each and don't cross over jurisdiction. The other piece of that is, from FEMA, the recommendation is if you have a significant, or really any kind of project, plan, or program that you think is worthy of mitigation funds of some kind that you want to pursue in the next 5 years, probably better be in your hazard mitigation plan. And if it is not in your hazard mitigation plan in some form or fashion, they are likely to deny or certainly score you much lower in your competitive application for funding, because they often will come back and say, well, you didn't say it was important in your plan, you know. So it complicates things and can potentially be a barrier. So we have to project out together as jurisdictions and internally as well as together, what do we think we're gonna pursue? What are we gonna keep going forward? So those are kind of the main key purposes. As I always forget how to, there you go. I'm not patient enough. So here's an example of a Grants Pass hazard mitigation action. If you didn't know, you had kind of a subcommittee of your staff representing the city jurisdiction that I acquainted and connected with our contractor and consultant who put together this plan for us, and your staff gave feedback as well as partners that you work closely together on particular projects, and that's where this information came from. So there was a kind of several meetings, a process of looking at the old plan. Did any of it make sense to carry forward or to upgrade, and anything new that needed to be added? So here's just an example of an earthquake action item. A high priority action item. The description is complete structural and non-structural retrofit projects on the following critical facilities of the City Hall, Department of Public Safety, and City Yard. And then the description of what the intent and benefits are, who the likely leads would be within your city jurisdiction, who the likely partners would be at the federal, state, county level, whatever makes sense there for that action item. What are the potential funding sources? What's the projected cost? What's the projected timeline? So each action or goal that gets identified has this basic information. And then there are other pieces of the plan that may or may not go into deeper detail. But this is kind of the crux of it when they say, hey, did you identify something in your plan? They're looking at these pieces. And again, what else did I want to review with you? I wanted to go back. Hold on. Whoop. Arrow keys. Did I end my slide sheet? Oh, sorry. I'm really struggling tonight. So it's like half my brain is not here and it's showing. Perfect. Yeah, thanks. See, it takes a team. Thank you. So the other piece that I just wanted to briefly point out is here in your grants pass addendum, there's a hazard analysis matrix, which ranks the higher, medium, lower tiers of hazards and their likely impacts to your community. And again, there's some, it's pretty much similar to the county because you're not like in an isolated bubble, so there's not likely to be a great significance between your addendum or Cave Junction's addendum and the larger plan. But if you just wanted to look at your slice, here it is. And the criteria includes, like I said, that historic look back. People often feel that fire is our biggest threat. It's certainly the one that people think of all the time, but it is often useful and I think helpful to utilize a plan like this to point out that actually if you look at economics and operations, it's winter storms that are consistently our highest, heaviest, and longest impacts. And yet we feel differently about it. And I don't know if just because we all get to play in the snow and it feels psychologically different, but there's useful pieces in there that can be referred to that may prompt a different thinking. Because if we just focus on fire, it's not going to be enough. We have other things that are equally or more impactful over time. Earthquake is on here as a top tier. Again, that's a difficult one psychologically for folks. The reason it tiers at the top is not because historically there have been many, but because the two that are historically recorded and confirmed were so consequential. And we know another one will happen at one point, so that tips it into the top tier with a different set of criteria, if that makes sense. Your hazard analysis matrix is a little more heavier weighted towards floods, if that makes sense within your jurisdiction. If you look at the greater county jurisdiction overall, sure, we have lots of places that flood, but you're hyper-located next to the river, and so a significant flood is just going to be that much more impactful to you. So those are the main pieces I wanted to point out. All the rest is gravy and meat. Any questions for me so far?
Guess not.
Okay. Yep.
Nope. Vanessa.
From the steering committee in the very front of the plan, noticeably missing is law enforcement. Do you see any benefit to adding a member of the county and city law enforcement in the next 5-year review?
So they were involved in conversations. They just did not have the time or ability to participate in subcommittee meetings. But there were conversations that occurred outside of those meetings, and they did have an opportunity to give review and feedback. Certainly the bigger the party, the better. But they did have an opportunity. We had an additional review session that is not documented in these subcommittees at my, what we call the EMB, the Emergency Management Board meetings. There's a kind of a NHMP piece to that we review on a quarterly basis, and I believe it was an April session, and law enforcement from both sides was there, as well as OSP. We just rolled out large slides of the old plan's hazards and some of the proposed new ones, and held side conversations about it. So that's, it occurred, but more informally, because that's what worked for them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay, okay, perfect. Well, I'm gonna be over here if you need me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Emily. This is open to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this topic? She's going for it. Come on, Rika.
Rika Brown, Grants Pass. When she was talking about hazard mitigation, my thoughts immediately went to water. Water is the great moderator of our climate, of our weather. It makes things warmer, colder, but in opposition to dryness. Dryness makes high highs and low lows. Humidity makes lower highs and higher lows. It's pretty much that simple. Rain and clouds bring down temperatures during the day, but bring them up at night. And all of these things make weather a whole lot more bearable and better for us. If we have moisture in the air, we have a lot less chance of fire. And this city used to produce millions of gallons more of water vapor than it does now. And we had rain when we watered our lawns religiously. When everybody was watering because the water was so cheap that we thought of it as free. We had much better weather and a lot less disaster. Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, we'll close public comment and turn this over to council. Any discussion? Valerie?
I think it's been discussed and hashed and everything, it sounds like, by the county and everybody else. So I'm just going to go ahead and move to adopt the City of Grants Pass addendum of the Josephine County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Thank you. Second from Kurt. Any discussion on the motion? Vanessa?
I did just want to take a quick moment to support the Grants Pass Steering Committee to take aggressive action in bringing forward to the council any ways that we can integrate this plan into our city operations, whether that be through the budget process or comprehensive plans as outlined in the plan. I think the quicker that we can get ahead of these natural disasters that we know are due to accelerate under climate change, I think the better it would be for the resiliency of our community.
Any further discussion? All right, the motion was to adopt the addendum, and that was Valerie who made the motion. How do you vote, Val?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thanks for being with us tonight, Emily, and good luck with the rest of your very important job.
All good.
We're on item D regarding portable toilets in Riverside Park.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My apologies, I realized about halfway through your last one that I didn't make hard copies of this presentation, so you don't have those in your packet, but happy to send those out. You'll recognize this. This is kind of one of the updates that you've asked for in terms of the portable toilets that are in Riverside Park. Yeah, you wanted 60-day kind of updates as this has gone on because they are allowed only temporarily as sort of this pilot project that you approved back in August. But I did want to highlight there's a couple of things. As I mentioned, August 18th, 2021 is when you give your first directive. August 20, the 2 toilets were placed. We have continued to monitor our Riverside Park staff, 4 different categories, tents, overnight vehicles, campers, and the amount of garbage collected. And so we do have lots of data on that. Wasn't provided to you in this packet. We're just kind of hitting the highlights, but we certainly have that if you want that. We did in October give you some data on the first 60-day trial. You voted 5-2 at that point in favor of continuing the 2 toilets in Riverside Park, and then on April 6th, you voted 7-1 to continue them. We did at that April 6th meeting, as you may recall, have a number of folks from the public that were here who had concerns about the placement of one of the toilets, as well as just some general, opposition to having them there. And you did ask us to move that. We did shift one of those temporary toilets, portable toilets, over to the west side of 6th Street, and that's where that one continues to be. Since Boatnick, we have seen some lower numbers. These are averages that are shown here. Our staff tracks these Monday through Friday, does a count, and then the next week, Monday through Friday, we do a count. So these are just kind of representative of averages. So from August of 21, when it was placed, through May, basically just prior to Boatnick, we saw on average about 23 vehicles. That's the first morning our staff goes out there, so this is usually about between 7:30 and 8:15. It takes about 45 to 50 minutes to kind of walk and do these counts. They count the number of vehicles that are there. Usually that's the first thing they do, so between 7:30, 7:45, so it's apparent which ones were there overnight, and on average there's about 23. 24 tents, and then sleepers would be folks that have slept in Riverside Park but were not in a tent. And then trash is basically these 30-gallon bags that are in addition to the regular trash containers that we have in Riverside Park. So is it a direct correlation? Tough to say, but it is an additional amount of garbage that has been tracked since then that has been collected. So 13.6 bags, and then you'll see there the June numbers after Boatnick, when the park was essentially cleared out, has been lower numbers other than the sleepers. Those were actually up quite a bit. So July has seen pretty much the same numbers, other than the trash has been up. Just a couple of other observations in this second quarter, that we've had outdoor fecal cleanup incidents remain pretty much similar to what we've seen in the first quarter, which was a drop there. We have also seen damages to the permanent restroom facilities have remained a little bit lower, not lower than what they were last time we reported to you, but lower than before the 2 portable toilets were placed. And again, that's just looking at sort of damages to the sinks, damages to the toilets, the number of incidents where we have to call a plumber out to, fix a line, things like that. And since we relocated that one toilet to the west side of 6th Street, the contractor that we have has reported pretty much minor damage and incidents. We had, a couple of fires in the toilets during that first report that I gave you. That really hasn't been happening. And I checked with our staff. We have not received any new complaints from the River Park Terrace residents who came to your last meeting since that was moved. So cost implication really hasn't changed that much. The price of these toilets has stayed the same. It's about $1,300 to $1,400 a month for the 2 toilets plus the hand washing stations. We've spent about $15,500 since August 18th, and those are currently being charged to and paid out of our Parks Division Maintenance Fund. You'll see on the second paragraph here on the resource page, the council, you did allocate $8,000 to portable toilets from ARPA. At the time that you allocated that, there was no discussion about whether that goes to the portable toilets by the Welcome Center or Riverside Park or the Grasshopper lot. So at this point, there's just $8,000 that's allocated from ARPA money So that is for you really, I guess, to direct if you want to. And then, of course, we do have some staff resources there. So there's your alternatives. Give us direction to continue this, or if you want to have some other feedback, or we can certainly bring that to you. But those are some of the options, and it's up to your discretion tonight.
Thank you, Brad. Are there any questions? Joel?
Good presentation, Brad. Thank you. If you didn't use the ARPA funds to fund the temporary or the portable toilets in Riverside Park, what fund would you use?
We'll just continue to use our maintenance fund
maintenance?
from Parks, yeah, which is,
Okay.
that division has, about $1.5 million total, and
Sure.
we have a significant amount in there for general maintenance. So it will just generally take from some of the other routine maintenance.
And then for the other locations, if you use the ARPA dollars for those, what dollars would be used to replace, what dollars would those free up?
Yeah, so that would be Downtown Services Division budget, which again is general fund, has some TLT money in it. We also, have just a general fund and TLT. I mean, are really the main resources. We don't have any other revenue source.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Vanessa?
I did observe a porta potty yesterday in Baker Park, and I don't recall going through a process like this for Baker Park, so I wanted to know how this differs from that situation.
Yes. So I don't know the genesis of that. I would have to check on that and get back to you. I do know that that one was closed for the winter, and we do tend to, we will bring one to Baker Park when the brick and mortar restroom is shut down for the winter time, but obviously that is not the case right now. So I do know that that's been there for a little while, so I'm sorry, I'm guessing that it's a continuation of that winterization program, and it just got left there because we have had quite a bit of damage to the brick and mortar at Baker. But
Thank you.
There's also one at Tussing that I noticed last year.
yeah, I think the Riverside Park issue was specifically raised by council, as a result of the report that staff gave you back last summer when we had Ken and a couple other park staff here kind of talking about some of the impacts to staff. That's, I think, really how we got to where we are as a result of that. I think council was looking to support staff in some way, and allowing for the placement of the Riverside Park ones came as a result of that.
Other questions? All right, thanks, Brad. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this? All right, we'll close public comment and turn it back over to the council for discussion. Vanessa?
I do support continuing to make staff's life easier and providing additional restrooms in Riverside Park. I just don't know that it needs to be revisited as frequently as it is. With that being said, I move to authorize leaving 2 portable toilets on site at Riverside Park for the summer months and review this matter again in 1 year.
Is there a second? Kurt with the second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, not seeing it. Joel, go ahead.
I just had, I don't need to review it every 3 months or whatever. We do have a change in our environment coming that we're all aware of. It was the headlines in tonight's paper. And if the portable potties are no longer being used, then we probably need to examine that if it's before that time. Because otherwise we're just spending money where we don't use them. And so if we review it in a year, but we're open to review earlier if they're not being used, or if the existing capacity of the restrooms at the park can serve the clientele, then I would hope as we move forward that there would be a difference. Whether there will be or not, I don't know, remains to be seen.
Further discussion? All right, so the motion was to authorize leaving the 2 toilets on site for 1 year. And Vanessa, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
DJ?
No.
Rick?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-1. That brings us to our committee appointments. We have one opening on the Committee on Public Art, and we received an application from one candidate, which was Rebecca Shane. The committee recommended appointing Ms. Shane. It says they thought she seemed very impressive, enthusiastic, and community-minded. They like that she's new to the community and wants to serve the community. Valerie?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Rebecca Shane to the Committee on Public Art.
Thank you. Is there a second from Vanessa? Thank you. Any discussion? All right. We have a motion to appoint Rebecca Shane to COPA. And Valerie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes. Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We also had a vacancy on the Central Business District Vitalization Task Force. There's one opening for the position that was vacated, unfortunately, when Ginger Ford passed away. The person applying for the position is her daughter, Kathy Ford Johnson, and the committee recommended appointing Kathy with the note that she has been listening to all the meetings with her mother, Virginia. She has the same qualifications as Virginia and checks all the boxes. And her application is attached to your pink form. Any discussion? Valerie?
I'm going to make a motion to appoint Kathy Ford Johnson to the Central Business District Vitalization Task Force.
Thank you. Joel with the second. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Valerie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. All right. I'm sorry, Cal, you were here from the COPA committee. Did you want to speak on that? Or you're just listening in? Okay. Public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item. And we have one person signed up to speak. It is Rika Brown.
Rika Brown, Grants Pass. A few weeks ago, I was heading to a customer's house and saw that the alley near Laurel Street that I have long used to get from Rogue River Avenue to Central Avenue and Central Court, where she lives, was blocked by a long, shiny, new chain-link gate across the middle of it. I called city police about this blocking of an alley that I have used for nearly 20 years. I got a call back from CSO Altheed, who said that he researched the matter by looking at a planning map. He said that it is a flag lot driveway for the single house that faces onto that alley and that they have a right to gate it. I told him that our city attorney last year researched the ownership of that nameless alley and said that the city owns it. It is nearly identical to an alley named Lee Lane, just down the street to the east. Paved, single lane, running from one street to another with a line of telephone poles along it. I said he should talk to our new city attorney. He said that he wouldn't bother the city attorney about it, but he would do more research after he gets back from his vacation. I think that this decision was a little above this man's authority, and he probably didn't decide it on his own. I think that the city paved that alley along with Lee Lane to provide more access for emergency vehicles and riverfront evacuations, along with everyday convenience for the public between a couple of long streets with only Oak Street crossing them between 5th Street and Greenwood Avenue. A city councilor who lives on Oak Street said that alley has been used by the public for at least 30 years. City Manager Kubik has, with the consent of council, blocked 2 long-standing public access stairways to the Rogue River with locked gates at the request of neighboring homeowners because they don't like the riffraff using them. We are all members of the public, and it is illegal under Oregon law to block public access to the river where it exists. Since the Courier, which the Courier has pointed out, Manager Kubik has this year blocked river access to a long-used wading and fishing area along a city-owned trail by not sufficiently cutting cheat and foxtail grasses that make those trails dangerous to dogs and people. With the gating of that alley, he shows a pattern of illegally blocking public access to public property. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak tonight? All right, we will close public comment. Did we receive any emails?
No, we did not.
All right, and is there anyone from the council who wanted to respond to public comment tonight? Joel?
I just had one quick question for Rika. Did the CSO get back to you after vacation? Oh, okay, thank you.
DJ?
Sure, not really interested in a conversation about it at this point. I would just like to encourage that these questions that Rika has are completely satisfied, whether that means asking the city attorney for his advice or otherwise.
So this question has come across my desk, and I am doing research into it.
Thank you. Okay, anything further with regard to public comment? Vanessa?
Yeah, really quickly, I do support public access to especially our beautiful gem of the Rogue River. I do have concerns with increasing public access within the city limits until the city council can take seriously a swift water rescue program. The more access there is to the river, the more opportunities there is for people to drown in the worst case scenario or become injured. And we don't currently have a fire department that's well equipped to respond to those types of calls.
All right, the consent agenda is items of such a routine nature without controversy that they may be approved with a single action, and our council president is going to read the consent agenda.
Okay, we got items A through J. A, resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a grant application and upon award, enter into agreement for transportation and growth management grant for a multimodal corridor study on 6th and 7th Streets. Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the fiscal year 23 overlays project number TR 6372. Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a wastewater services agreement with West Yost and Associates. D, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a water master services agreement with RH2 Engineering. E, resolution authorizing the city manager to continue the contract extension for the annual municipal auditor services. F, motion to readopt the city's investment policy. G, motion acknowledging the receipt of the monthly financial report for May 2022. And then we have minutes from 3 different meetings, motions for approving the minutes of the city council meeting of July 6th, the Central Business District Vitalization Task Force meeting of June 6th, and the minutes of the Sustainability and Energy Action Task Force meeting of May 3rd. And unless there's a start item or we need further discussion, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Kurt with the second. Vanessa does have a question.
This might be for Jason. Items C and D, I could not find a difference. Is there one?
There is not. Normally, we do have a contract with one company for master services agreement. In this instance, the firm of West Jost offered a lot of advantages over RH2 in the arena of cybersecurity, in the arena of water modeling, and in water planning. And so the committee and both firms agreed to issue 2 master services agreement, and we'll split those water services between the 2 firms.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, Joel made a motion to pass the consent agenda. Joel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
DJ?
Yeah.
Rick?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Matters from mayor, council, and staff. So we were going to discuss how you would like to handle committee motions, because we want to have some sort of process that allows you to see and hear all the motions that are made by our city advisory committees. And so I guess at one point I had suggested just putting them in the back of the packet, basically as a memo, if you will, so that you can read what they all are, and we'll have a look at what they all are, but they're not necessarily action items on that date. Obviously, the range of what committees could be recommending can vary tremendously, as all the committees are different and their needs are different. So I guess this method, my idea was that you would see them all, and then if something piqued your interest and you wanted to act on that, you would need to request it be added to an agenda. So I think that's kind of a summary of where we're at right now. It doesn't need to stay that way. If you have other suggestions or questions. Valerie?
I actually like the idea. I think it's important, we used to do liaison reports, and we decided that was like it got too involved and they were getting too long. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a way for the committees to feel that they were heard. And so I do think it's very important that their motion does get printed and we do see it. But it's been awkward because then it's like, we don't know where to go with it. So I like the idea of looking at it, talking about it, and then putting it on a future agenda and making a decision at that point whether it's an agenda item or if it's just something that the liaison can take back, because sometimes it's, whatever. But I do like that idea because I do think it's important that we do something if we're not going to do the liaison reports.
Right, I think if you wanted to take some sort of formal action on the night of the first meeting, you could make a motion to put it either on consent calendar or a workshop or a council action item, so that we're deciding, how to deal with it rather than the answer to the question, which I think maybe isn't something we did 2 weeks ago. And I don't have I meant to bring it with me tonight, but I didn't, but there were 3 items, and I know one of them we put on a future consent calendar, and I don't remember exactly what the other 2 were off the top of my head, but I do have it ripped out, that we need to deal with those. But yeah, maybe just a decision about how you'd like to handle it would be a good way to go. Rob, then DJ.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it's because sometimes it could be minor or it could be a little more than minor as far as cost implications. So we're really not prepared on each time to make a split-second decision on something we've seen for the first time. Sometimes staff might have to investigate a cost or whatever. So I think having some ability to look at it at a future a date certain is really good, because we'll have the ability to look at any cost implications as well.
TJ.
Sure. Yeah, Sarah, I agreed with what you had formerly proposed, in that we get it in the packet. It's information for everybody to see. But I think where it got sticky was a misunderstanding of administration, in that we formalized it, we researched it, it became an action item, and that, I think, was an error. And then in my recollection, we just kind of stopped talking about it. So I liked that idea. We can get it in writing, as Valerie mentioned, because I think recognition of our committees is very important. But having that be the structured mechanism or procedure that we use to recognize motions, I'm not too fancy on going there. I think that a council liaison to a committee should have the liberty to champion a motion if they saw fit to council. I see that as that being their duty. So I think we're really on the right track here, but I'd be wary of making this, too formalized, too procedural, too structural, but in the same time having recognition. Thanks.
Okay, so is your suggestion there, DJ, that we just have a look at it at the first meeting, and then that somebody needs to champion it in order to get it placed somewhere in the future, or that we would make a decision on the first night about how to handle the item?
I would kind of leave that to the liberty of council, really. A liaison could champion, a council could ask for more information, et cetera. I think we're very close to where we should be.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm not totally sure where we stand on that, but the next time this comes up, we can either make a motion that night about how you would like to see it come up again on an agenda, or you could save it for the following Monday workshop agenda review, or a future date, depending on what it is. I think the nature of these, in my experience, is that it's hard to make a hard and fast rule, because they really can be anything, and they might be something that is off the wall and you've never heard of. It could be something that we've talked about 5 times. It's, so you don't want to, and then we need to publicly notice if we're going to actually make a decision on any particular subject. So we just want to have that first discussion be about how to handle it rather than what the nature of the item is. Vanessa.
I like the original idea that you came up with of including it in the packet and then allowing for a couple counselors to champion for it to be on the agenda. I would like to see it as a council action item. We don't have to make decisions on council action items. We can always table them to a later date. So if we feel like we need more information or the picture isn't entirely clear, we can move it to another business meeting.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow what you would like to be a council action item.
The motion would come to the council as a...
the recommendation from the committee would come as a council action item instead of in the back of the packet?
It would originally come to us in the back of the packet, and if 3 or more counselors support having it on the agenda, it would come to us as council action.
Okay, do we need to make a definitive rule about that, as opposed to just having it be, some things might be a workshop, some things might be a consent calendar, depending on the nature of what they are?
It's a really good point. I'm just concerned that we might fall back into the place where we don't have a procedure again.
Well, the very first step is the key, that you're going to see it. So then it puts it on the council to decide if it's something you want to take action on. And I guess if nobody remembers to take action, it maybe wasn't that important. If you forget it, that means it wasn't that important to you. Like your wife's birthday, remember that one, Joel, okay? All right, is there any further discussion on that? Okay, other items from council? No? All right, items from staff tonight?
Two quick things. There's two RFPs that council's been talking about quite a bit lately. The Caveman Pool RFP went live last Friday. So that's going to be open for about a month. We've already gotten about 6 or 7 inquiries from folks on that, so that's hopping. And then the other one is the UGB infrastructure ARPA RFP, 1.6 million. So that was sent out to you today as a final draft. We did incorporate some of the comments that Councilor DeLaGrange, I think, had at your last workshop. We just wanted to give you another shot at that. So you received that today. And then the Art Along the Rogue. We are busy planning for that. October 7 through 9 downtown. So James on our staff has been busy contacting artists and bands, and so I just want to let you know that that's in full swing. So you may see some information around town, some flyers, and or constituents who are being approached to sponsor that event.
Fun. And it is back to the 50s week, so come on down to the car show on Saturday. Anything else? All right. Who's going to do it? Vanessa?
I move to adjourn.
Second from Valerie. All in favor of adjourning this evening?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rick says good night, and we are adjourned. See you on Monday.